I'm Adam. And I'm Rex. And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Hello, Rex. Do you remember what I told you yesterday about not digging in the garden? A short memory is a blissful existence. Besides, flowers grow better with a little canine contribution. Rex, I'm serious. You turned my tulip bed into a crater. A dog's garden is a dog's paradise. But fine, I'll try to remember. What's your lesson today? We're learning about memory and how important it is to retain information. Ah, memory, like a bone buried in the yard of the mind. Sometimes you find it, sometimes it's dug up by squirrels. I guess that's one way to put it, but my students need to remember their homework and lessons. Homework is the chew toy of the mind. It gets slobbered on and forgotten under the couch. Rex, you really have a way with words. But seriously, memory is crucial for learning. True wisdom. Remember to remember, but also remember to forget the things that don't matter, like the tulip bed. Thanks, Rex. I'll keep that in mind. Today's book shines light on the little-known history of Memorial Day and reminds us never to forget the people who put their lives on the line for their country. Let's get started. A Day for Rememberin, inspired by the true events of the first Memorial Day. Written by Leah Henderson. Illustrated by Floyd Cooper. Dark and sad will be the hour to this nation when it forgets to pay grateful homage to its greatest benefactors, the loyal soldiers who imperiled all for country and freedom. Frederick Douglass, 1871. Decoration Day Speech. Arlington National Cemetery, Virginia. In 1861, the United States of America was torn apart by civil war, with the northern states, the Union, fighting the southern states, the Confederacy. The North wanted to keep the country intact, both North and South, and to ensure that all people were equal by abolishing slavery. The South did not agree, and these states sought to establish themselves as their own country separate from the North, the Confederate States of America. They also sought to keep slavery. The war was fought for 4 years until 1865, when the Confederacy surrendered to the Union. The United States remained united and slavery was abolished. Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, was established to honor those who gave their lives while fighting in the Civil War. The holiday has since evolved to commemorate all American military personnel who have died in any and all wars. This is the story of what many consider the first Memorial Day celebration. 9 days in a row, Papa up early and gone again. I still can't go with him, though. He said, "Eli, school's where you need to be, reading and counting." But I am counting right here, day 9. Not following after Papa is harder than holding a hot potato in my hands. He said important work has to be done, man's work. I rose on my toes, then pushing out my chin, stretching as tall as my 10-year-old self could, but it made no difference. I imagine him out there standing up to folks who spit in our faces, call us names, or try to run us out of our home, mad 'cause we aren't enslaved no more. Or I think of him putting out fires and keeping order with the 21st Colored Infantry, Union soldiers brown like us, who marched up Meeting Street holding their heads high in victory, especially the ones who've been enslaved here in Charleston. There were some of the first to come when the mayor surrendered the city to the Union. No use begging to follow Papa, though. Mama will only fuss. "Eli, you now have the hard-earned right to learn, and it's what's gonna get you beyond. Master's locked away learning 'cause knowledge is its own freedom. You're gonna school, and no more words are getting spilt about it." Knowledge is the bone that never breaks. That's a good one, Rex. But why do you say that? Because a wise pump once told me an educated mind is a well-chewed slipper. Well, in my classroom, I aim to inspire young minds to think critically and creatively. A noble cause indeed. Teach a pup to fetch, and you feed him for a day. Teach a pup to think, and you feed him for a lifetime. That's quite profound for a dog. But Rex, how would you explain the importance of education to my students? Simple. The more you learn, the more treats you earn. I think they'll like that. But isn't education more than just about earning treats? Absolutely. A mind without education is like a tail without a wag. It just doesn't make sense. True. So, Rex, what's your advice for my students? Remember, kids, books are like bones. The more you dig, the more you find. And never stop digging. Thanks, Rex. I think you've got the makings of a great teacher. Bark my words, Adam. Bark my words. Before the war, worry never let my insides alone. Always scared that Mama or Papa would get sold away, never to come back home. But today, Papa comes home as night covers the sky, almost looking worse than after toiling in Master's fields. But in those days, and the fields are over. Papa said, unlike some, we aren't going back because we aren't enslaved no more. We were digging and building and painting, he says after supper. Digging, building, painting? But Papa isn't giving no more answers. Wake up, Eli. You're coming with me. Day 10. I spring out of bed like beans in a skillet and jump into my breeches. Something important must be happening if Papa is letting me miss even 1 second of school. My hard-earned right, and Mama isn't putting up no fuss. With molasses-smeared cornbread sliding down my throat, I race to catch Papa. His long strides are met by others as more men join us, their boots crunching against pebbles on a hard road. My new schooling helps me count 28 men in all. Shoulders back, chest out, they stomp along, ready to do the real important business Papa talks about. Business he thinks I'm old enough to do now too. You need to see the work we's doing before it's all done, he says. We strut through the entrance at the Planters Racecourse, where white folks used to watch mighty horses run before the war. But it isn't a racecourse no more. For a while, the Confederates made it a jail. Mama and ladies from church used to sneak food to the Union soldiers held prisoner there. Skinny and sickly, those men hardly had more clothes than most lonesome slave. A newspaper man said those poor souls had no covering but the sky, and that they were heartsick, homesick, sick in body, sick in life, all because they fought against slavery and our God-given right to be free. So over the evening paper, Mama had learned to read in secret while enslaved. She promised, we'll share every morsel we got till we got no more. But the living are gone now, and the dead lie by our feet. Without a word, Papa and the other men got to digging, hammering, and cutting wood. Papa points to the fence where some of my schoolmates have joined their papas too. Help with the whitewashing, Eli. I drag my feet though, wanting to stay by Papa's side, but he rushes around doing more work in a minute than he'd done in 3 hours on Master's land. An old usher from our church pushes a painting brush in my hand, and I get to working too. As the sun beats our backs, the men sing in heavy, deep voices that rattle the dirt. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation to free the slaves in 1863 is such an important part of history. A bone buried is a bone earned. I guess. Anyway, the proclamation declared that all slaves in the Confederate States were to be freed. Freedom is the best chew toy. I suppose so. And it marked a turning point in the Civil War, giving hope to many people. When the gate opens, don't look back. That's a good way to put it. It was a chance for a new beginning for so many. Better to wag your tail in freedom than to sit in a golden cage. Exactly. It's important to appreciate our freedom and learn from the past. A dog with a clear conscience barks the loudest. And what does that mean in context? Speak up for what's right, even if it's a howl in the night. Wise words. You should come to class and share your maxims with the kids. A lesson learned is a treat well deserved. When the sun starts slipping behind the trees, they raise an arch. Tired pinches my shoulders and my palms blaze crisscross with tiny scrapes from the day's hard toil. But I don't pay the sting or ache no mind. We've done good work for the soldiers who lost their lives for our freedom. The next morning, before the rooster's first gawks, I leap up, and I'm not going to school again today. None of us colored children are. This day is that important. My best mended pants and cleanest shirt wait on my blanket. Mama gathers up her basket full of Mayflower bundles. Papa straightens his hat, and we leave our yard just as our neighbors leave theirs. Black faces, more than I've ever seen together, filled the streets with bouquets, crosses, and wreaths. I'm not sure a flower is left unpicked in Charleston. My schoolmates carry roses and hawthorns, but since I'm fastest at learning my numbers and letters, I get to carry the flag. Right out in front, I stomp knees high like the important colored soldiers did up Meeting Street. Mama strides in her best calico dress behind us with the women, grinning, proud. I can't see Papa, but I know he's somewhere in the quilt of black, brown, and white faces. In lines stretching longer than a mile, we cross onto the old racecourse, singing with our fullest hearts. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. Although we sing about John Brown, we are really singing for all the buried Union soldiers. After the last word is sung, quiet comes, our feet shushing across the sandy soil. We circle the fresh dirt mounds with sweet-smelling petals of rose, lilac, and jasmine swirling to the ground. Thousands of hands sprinkle thousands of spring blossoms. The graves become a bed of petals and tears. The flag flaps in the breeze when I hand it off, as if waving goodbye to the Union soldiers finally at peace. Pastors preach sacrifice, abolitionists proclaim freedom, and officers bid us to remember. Even though we are sad, we are celebrating too. My heart rests easy now. Me, Mama, and Papa can't never be sold away no more, and I'm getting my schooling, its own freedom, like Mama said. So my insides feel all good. While breaking bread, we listen to more speeches about the martyrs of the racecourse and freedom. Blurry eyes praise a Union brigade marching round the pond of blossoms. There's lots of head nodding and as families gather round and grandstand remembering, shedding tears, and giving thanks above. That flag never stops waving, but all my old slave time worry flies away. And as the moon joins in, we leave the racecourse with empty hands and near bursting hearts, hoping those Union soldiers, hugged by Charleston's sweetest blooms, know we will never forget what they've given of themselves for the priceless gift of our liberty. Memorial Day is near. They say, remember the fallen, celebrate the living. That's right. We honor those who served and enjoy the freedom they protected. Any plans? A day without celebration is like a bone without meat. I'm thinking barbecue. What about you? We usually have a picnic. The kids love it. Any advice for keeping them entertained? Idle paws are the devil's playground. Keep them busy with games. Tug of war, perhaps? Great idea. How do you manage all the excitement? A bark in time saves 9. Stay calm and lead by example. Are you teaching the kids the meaning behind the day? Yes, we talk about the importance of remembering the soldiers. How would you explain it? A hero's legacy is a seed of freedom. Tell them stories of bravery and sacrifice. Keep it simple but heartfelt. I'll do that. Thanks, Rex. An old dog may not learn new tricks, but he has plenty of old ones. Enjoy Memorial Day, Adam. You too, Rex. Don't eat too many hot dogs. Moderation in treats is the key to a happy tale. And while you're remembering things, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm Adam, and I'm Rex, and this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Author's Note. A few years ago, I stumbled across an image of 200 or so black children getting ready for what looked like a parade, and my curiosity was ignited. I did a quick search and found an article about the first Decoration Day. There are over a dozen places that lay claim to this distinction. However, a story from Charleston, South Carolina, at the end of the Civil War caught my attention. A procession of 10,000, most newly freed enslaved people, led by almost 3,000 black children. Sadly, it is a moment in our country's history that has not garnered more mention, but for me, a spotlight suddenly blazed bright. Every year on Memorial Day, originally known as Decoration Day, we remember the men and women in the armed forces who died in service to our country. But many may be unaware of its beginnings. Regardless of if you believe, as I do, that this Charleston event was the first community-led observance of Decoration Day, it is important to consider the significance of the gesture of these once enslaved people towards the soldiers who lost their lives fighting in part for their freedom. Above all else, that May Day was a gathering to honor and to remember those who, as Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, gave the last full measure of devotion. And we too should remember their sacrifice and a community's show of thanks. These are the children who sparked my curiosity. Although this image is often attached to the May 1st, 1865 event in Charleston, South Carolina, it was taken by Francis Benjamin Johnson at the Whittier Primary School in Hampton, Virginia between 1899 and 1900. The Roots of Decoration Day, Charleston, South Carolina, 1865. This is the racecourse club house where the Union officers were imprisoned. The enlisted men were kept on the field and were subject to the elements. The photograph was taken in Charleston, South Carolina, April 1865. In September 1864, during the final years of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, a well-to-do racecourse in Charleston, South Carolina, was turned into a prison for captured Union soldiers. It was said that over 10,000 prisoners had been held in the Washington racecourse at one time, and that the prison was like a miniature Camp Sumter in Andersonville, Georgia, one of the worst Confederate prisons. Many of the prisoners were stripped nearly bare on arrival and housed in an open section of the racecourse with no tents or other covering for protection. By the time the prison closed less than 7 months later, 257 Union prisoners had died on the grounds due to exposure, disease, and starvation. In late April 1865, with the North victorious, 28 newly freed men who called themselves the Friends of the Martyrs and the Patriotic Association of Colored Men volunteered to make a respectful resting place for the fallen Union soldiers who had helped secure their freedom. They reburied the martyrs in individual plots and placed a headstone in front of each grave. Over 10 exhausting days, the men put the makeshift cemetery in order, erecting a 10-foot-high whitewash fence with an archway over the entrance gate that read Martyrs of the Racecourse. On May 1st, the first free May Day in the lives of the formerly enslaved, 10,000 people, both black and white, gathered at the racecourse to pay respect. Nearly 3,000 black children from newly formed freedmen's schools led the way. Countless other newly freed citizens, abolitionists, missionaries, teachers, Union loyalists, officers, and even a few former slaveholders took place in the procession. After the children marched and sang John Brown's Body, America, Rally Round the Flag, and the Star-Spangled Banner, every person passed under the archway and scattered flowers over the graves in silence. When all had left, the tops, the sides, and the spaces between them were one mass of flowers. Not a speck of earth could be seen, recalled the special correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune. A number of ministers, military officers, and abolitionists gave speeches on the 2 separate stages within the racecourse grounds. A full brigade of colored Union infantry marched around the graves and held drills in the inner area of the racecourse. Families spread out across the fields to listen to speeches and picnic into the evening as they honored the fallen and celebrated their newfound freedom. According to a special correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune, this early Decoration Day ceremony was a procession of friends and mourners as South Carolina and the United States never saw before. A Day for Rememberin is a fictionalized account of these events. Timeline: March 4th, 1861, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th President of the United States of America. April 12th, 1861, Confederate troops attacked Fort Sumter near Charleston, South Carolina. The American Civil War began. January 1st, 1863. President Lincoln issued the final Emancipation Proclamation, announcing the freedom of all enslaved people in territories held by Confederates. September 1864. The first Union prisoners were brought to the Washington Race Course in Charleston, South Carolina. January 31st, 1865. The U.S. Congress approved the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which legally abolished slavery. February 18th, 1865. The mayor of Charleston surrendered to Union troops. Many of the white residents evacuated, while many of the former enslaved people and freedmen remained. February 1865. The war officially ended. The prisoners at the Washington Race Course were freed. April through May of 1865. The final surrenders of remaining Confederate troops occurred. April 14, 1865. President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. May 1, 1865. Decoration Day. 10,000 newly freed enslaved people, abolitionists, and others decorated the graves of 257 fallen Union soldiers at the Washington Race Course in Charleston, South Carolina. July 4, 1865. Emma Hunter and Elizabeth Meyer of Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, helped start a remembrance tradition in their small town by decorating the graves of Civil War soldiers, including those who might have had no one to remember them. December 6, 1865. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, passed by Congress on January 31, 1865, was finally ratified by all states. Slavery was fully abolished. April 25, 1866. While decorating the graves of fallen Confederate soldiers, 4 women from the Ladies' Memorial Association in Columbia, Mississippi, also laid flowers at the unkempt graves of nearby Union soldiers. May 5, 1866. In Waterloo, New York, Henry Carter Wells and General John B. Murray organized a ceremony to honor their community's fallen Civil War soldiers. They called it Decoration Day. May 5, 1868. General John A. Logan, National Commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, GAR, called for an annual decoration of graves every May 30th. May 30th, 1868. Memorial Day was officially observed for the first time in Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, where both Union and Confederate soldiers are buried. 1882. Decoration Day became known as Memorial Day to remember American soldiers lost in all wars, but the name was not officially changed until after World War II. May 17th and 19th, 1966. President Lyndon B. Johnson officially declared Waterloo, New York, the birthplace of Memorial Day. January 1, 1971. The Uniform Monday Holiday Act was passed by Congress, which established that Memorial Day is to be celebrated on the last Monday of May. April 14, 1971. Memorial Day officially became a national holiday. Other cities with claims of being the birthplace of Memorial Day: Columbus, Georgia; Savannah, Georgia; Carbondale, Illinois; Columbus, Mississippi; Waterloo, New York; Boalsburg, Pennsylvania; Gettysburg, Pennsylvania; Petersburg, Virginia; Warrenton, Virginia. Did you know General John A. Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic established Memorial Day on May 5, 1868 to honor Civil War soldiers who died in battle? It was originally called Decoration Day because soldiers would decorate the graves of their fallen comrades with flowers, wreaths, and flags.